Everyone from all around the world. First let me say to you, welcome to the Friday of International Coaching Week. And we just got 3 more days to go. Gone quickly, right? Yeah, everything goes by very fast when you're enjoying yourself and having fun with all these webinars. It gives me a great pleasure today to introduce to you Hilary, who I'm sure most of you know is the immediate past chair of ICF Global. Hilary is going to speak to you about a topic that I know attracts many of your attention and engages many of you in thought-provoking ways. And the topic is around building coaching cultures. And before I say anything more about what Hilary is going to do, I just want to encourage you. You have the Global Past Chair presenting to you on coaching cultures. So do dive in and ask your questions. Engage in discussion points that you may not have asked or engaged in before. Okay? So you and I will contract on that part. So let's go back to what Hilary is going to talk about. She's going to pick up what is really the impact on organizations building a coaching culture. And she's going to talk about key recommendations for organizations wishing in the future to create and invest in a coaching culture. She's going to use some research, and at the end of it, she will leave the research and the slides with you, so you will have copies of it. And I'm not sure about the research, I'll check in with her again, but definitely you'll have copies of her slides. So, don't worry too much about taking notes. I suggest that you rather just sit back, enjoy it, and engage with Hilary. And with that, I hand over to you, Hilary. Welcome, and as usual, lovely being with you.
Thanks, Cindy. And I'm really delighted to be here today. And as you rightly say, to celebrate International Coaching Week that we're right in the middle of, where all around the world for this whole week and for another couple of days, people are really engaging and celebrating what coaching is and bringing it to the world. So I'm really delighted to the fact that today we've also got people from around the world as well. And so it's just one of those things that really encourage that coaching is now something that we all know about, and we're getting more knowledge about it and people are understanding it better. So I'm really, really happy to be here. I am going to share my screen in a moment because I've got some slides that I'd like to share with you. And at the end of the presentation, the slides will be available, and there are all of the links to the studies, the research that I've used to put this presentation together. So you don't need to worry about how to find those. If you're an ICF member, there are also executive summaries which will give you really more detail about things that I'm going to talk about that you can then utilize. If you're not an ICF member, then maybe you'd like to come one at some point in the future, but they are available to you for a small fee as well. So don't worry about not being able to access the data. So, and as Cindy said, love it if we have a dialogue. So I've got some information that I'd like to share. Let me share my screen to start with so I can show you what my presentation is. And go to here, and hopefully you're all now seeing my first slide. So I'm really going to be talking about the observations and trends. And that's backed up with some of the executive summaries. But I thought it might be interesting to look at what are the current observations about what's going on in organizations, and why is coaching becoming really important, and the need for it, and the development of coaching cultures. And then what are the future trends as well. And I'm going to share with you those recommendations, plus also hopefully a case study that will highlight what happens when you really do focus and create a coaching culture. So in order to, I'm always doing that to start with. So the key things I'm going to look at is current observations. So why is it that now organizations are really focusing on coaching and creating culture? What are some of the impacts, and how have we measured those? What are the future trends, key recommendations? Before I do, For those of you who aren't perhaps members of ICF, I do want to just tell you that just a couple of things about ICF is that we actually started in 1997, and originally it was designed to be a place of community. We are still very much a membership organization creating community, but it is also really important that we are the pioneers of developing global standards, both in professional coaching, around the core competencies we use, around ethics, and importantly, industry research and thought leadership. So this is why we're able now to really get really good data on what's going on in the coaching world and in organizations. Clearly, we credential individuals and we accredit training programs. And it is very much around providing community around the world. We are a growing organization, and this year we're about 32,000 members. We have over 22,000 credential holders, which I'm really happy about. And we have over 130 chapters around the world. So if you're an ICF member, it does mean that people know that you've been professionally trained, and hopefully with your credential, which those of you who've got that are proud of, it really demonstrates your commitment also to the learning area. That's my advert for ICF. I clearly want to do that. I'm very proud to have been the global chair. So let's get on with what is it in coaching organizations? What are some of the current observations that we have around it? Well, one of the things that really is significant that I wanted to start with is the fact that we can now do a lot of correlation around what coaching culture does in organizations. And one of the things that's really important is that those organizations that have created strong coaching cultures really do have much higher employee engagement than those who don't. So you can see from that, there's something like an 8% difference between organizations who have a coaching culture, strong coaching culture, and those who don't. That actually does translate to real bottom line values as well. The case study that I would show at the end, they really looked at developing the coaching culture because they were losing so many employees. Their retention rate was really low. They've now changed that so that they reckon they save around about $700,000 US per year on making sure that they don't have to keep re-engaging employees. So real focus on that. The other thing that was really evident was that those with strong coaching cultures actually have a stronger financial performance. So there's a good reason why organizations really want to do that. And that clearly has an impact on the fact that people are engaged and therefore they don't lose people. Their productivity is higher. So you can see from the chart there that, in fact, again, there's a 7% difference between those people who've got, who are above average in their financial performance between those that do have a coaching culture and those that don't. So really important piece to look at. The other piece, then we can look at saying, well, what do our surveys tell us about organizations? Well, we've talked about the fact that coaching practices do increase employee engagement. But also what we're noticing is that coaching is used particularly for high potentials. And that's, again, around engagement, because if you've got really good high-performing people, you want to make sure you keep them. And by using a coaching culture for many reasons, they are very much more engaged. What we're also noticing is that in the past, coaching was used predominantly at the senior level, C-suite and executive level. What we're noticing now is that those organizations who have got strong coaching cultures actually have what is known as a bottom-up, top-down approach. So that it's not just the C-suite, it's not just executive levels. Coaching is available throughout the organization. And that can be done using different modalities, whether that's using external coaches, which still are used at executive level, but more and more are being used at other levels in the organization. We're seeing the rise of the internal coach, the internal professionally trained coach. And then the biggest piece that's really looking at the moment is managers and leaders using coaching skills is the big area that's being focused on at the moment. So those three things are really important about being able to offer all that combination of coaching throughout the organization if you really want to make a good coaching, have a strong coaching culture. What they've also noticed is people have really realized, understood that coaching is really able to be enterprise-wide. I'm of an age where I remember the sheep dip of training, where people would go through training and everyone was trained in the same way, through the same things. But actually, what we know is that people are individuals and often need different elements of training in order to get the best from them. And so coaching has been seen as being able to deliver that. And I know that many of us have known that for years, but it is now becoming really well known. The other thing is that people really do see coaching as being, as we call it, a merit badge. In the past, coaching was seen as something you did when you weren't doing well, or it was part of the fact that you were being performance managed. And if you're like me as a coach, I didn't engage in those activities as a coach. I did it once and never again. But now you more often walk along in an organization and people will come up to you and they'll say, this is my coach. And it is seen as something really good. And that's, again, demonstrating where you've got a strong coaching culture in an organization is where people are happy to declare that they are being coached. And the fact that coaching is now used very much in making sure that when there are other things going on, like training programs, even consulting, and in the big change management initiatives, which nowadays are quite common, coaching is being used as a way of either embedding learning or really accelerating, enhancing those change programs and making sure that people understand it so that people are well coached through the change so that that change happens faster. So coaching is being used in many different ways. And again, strong coaching cultures are where they're really noticing the difference. What we also have seen different over the years, and we're noticing this now because we're doing these surveys every couple of years, we redo the survey. So we've got really good data that can tell us what is happening, what's changing, is that many organizations now are making sure that they are using their managers and their internal coaches are receiving very coach-specific training, and they're using accredited programs. And we can see from the statistics in 2016, there were 32% of organizations were using that for managers and leaders, and now 47% are actually using coach-specific training. In the past, it was a manager may get 2 hours of training that was going to teach them how to be a coach. We know that managers don't need to be a coach, but having coach-specific training and coaching skills is really important. And there's also a big increase now in really making sure that internal coaches are really well trained as well, again, up from 45% to 55% in 2017. And we're noticing again that managers and internal coaches are often now increasingly using university-based programs as well, some of which I'm really pleased to say are accredited through the ICF. So coach-specific training is really important, and also making sure that they have the ability to become qualified and have credentials in our terminology. What we have also picked up and we're using now is that we can actually define a strength index for those organizations that have got strong coaching cultures. And the 4 key things that really impact how strongly the coaching culture is embedded are, the first one is that coaching is genuinely valued by all key stakeholders, and that can be internal and external stakeholders. It's also seen because there is funding behind it. So the value is shown by funding proper training and development. It's also, that's the monetary, and the time commitment is important so that internal coaches and managers and leaders are spending actual time in coaching or using their coaching skills to make sure that people are well developed. Funding for training, plus also that training of well accredited programs. And key is also the fact that that coaching is available not just at the high levels, it's available throughout the organization using those 3 modalities. And over the past year, between 2016 and 17, there was an increase from 17 to 25% of those organizations surveyed that actually have been found to have a strong coaching culture, looking at that strength index. So that we're going to be following as we go forward and do more research to make sure that that's a trend that continues. And you'll notice at the bottom of my slides where I reference some of the research that we've used from building coaching cultures with millennial leaders in 2017 and managers and leaders in 2016. So I'd really encourage you to go and have a look at those. So what is it that this leads to? And I think that's really important. Clearly, one of the bigger things nowadays that people are really wanting to focus on is team functioning. And we're noticing a lot of team development going on at the moment and team coaching programs going on at the moment. So what we're noticing, it's not just about individuals, it's about supporting teams and groups of people to work well together. That in turn has increased engagement because people are genuinely being able to be more productive, they're enjoying their work, which means that things like improved and increased productivity and employee relations goes hand in hand with that. Key has been developing leaders quicker as well. And one of the focuses often is in that transition period where you move from being a sole contributor to a leader of people. And that transition is being really readily helped with coaching to help people get there. The other 2 things I think is really important is around employee well-being. Nowadays, around the world, we're noticing the increase in mental health issues. Certainly here in the UK, that's an issue. And I think with going around the world with things like 24/7 working, the increased hours, the increased need to be more productive, mental health is a real challenge everywhere. And coaching is really supporting that in being able to create better cultures. And that's also then allowed employees to be much more aware of where they are and when to actually ask for help. So before I just take a quick look at, I'll go on to the impact and then I'll open up to see if there's any questions on what I've said first. So just before I move on to that, just want to bring in the fact that it's also one of the things we're noticing is that organizations, because of the coaching culture, means that there's a more collaborative approach. Managers and leaders indeed don't need to know all the answers. That in itself drives innovation. And one of the things we know in this fast-moving world is we need a lot more innovation. And so by having everybody involved in the conversation means that organizations are innovating more quickly. They're also finding that contributors, everyone in the organization feels more confident and empowered. And if you think about the survey which was done many years ago, which basically said, managers or people join organizations and leave managers, and that's because they don't feel valued. Whereas now using coaching cultures, they do feel valued, empowered to get on with things. And we've talked about this, but what is really important is this mix of modalities of how coaching is delivered. And we can see here that where you've got a strong coaching culture, 76% of those with strong coaching cultures use all these 3 modalities, which is really important to look at. And if we look at a chart, and then I will stop, and because I won't go through this whole chart, but what you can see from this chart is between 2015 and 2017, the increased use of coaching through internal, external, and managers using coaching skills for all different levels within the organization. Now, what this shows is that internal coaches are being used more and managers with coaching skills are absolutely being used more. But for those of you and us who are externals, there is still a real place for us as well. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions, Cindy. And if anyone wants to talk. Cindy, you're on mute.
Magda? Oh, okay.
Great.
attendees, if you want to engage with Hilary, please raise your hand so Magda could bring you into the panel. But for now, Hilary, there's a question here. I'll reflect it of you. Sadar asked, in your experience, is a CEO driving a coaching culture or the OD department?
That's a really great question, and you'll see when I come to recommendations, and I will answer that now and not wait, is in order that a coaching culture that really exists, you have to have top-level engagement in it. It's not just the OD department, it's not just the HR department. It has to come from the high level. And that also then means you have to have it really focused on what is the strategic imperative of the organization to drive the coaching culture. Because it does need funding in some way, it does need resource, and it needs focus. And if the CEO or the high level in the organization are not engaged with coaching, you'll get coaching happening, but you will not create that coaching culture. So it must be seen as a top-down as well as a bottom-up initiative and be linked to a business need. And you'll see, if you look at all the Prism Award case studies, which I would encourage you to look at, they all had a business imperative that they were trying to solve, and coaching culture was the way that they wanted to solve it. Great question.
Do you want to take another one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We've got someone come on.
Ruta asked, yeah, I would encourage the coaches to come on and ask some questions and engage in dialogue. Here's one. How does the bottom-up coaching culture develop? Are managers motivated to coach if all they get from their managers is direction and instruction?
So it takes time. Coaching cultures do not happen overnight. And so one of the pieces is education about what coaching is and what it can do with the organization. And one of the things that I've certainly noticed when I work in organizations is you need to start, it's not just training HR managers or HR people to become coaches or HR managers to use a coaching approach. It's very much about finding people who believe that their employees can make a difference and can innovate. So instead of always asking or telling people what to do, because that's what is being done historically, it's taking a risk, if you like, that says, I'm going to ask you what you want to do when they come to say, how do I do this, boss? So it's getting people who are willing to engage in learning what coaching skills are if they're a manager or leader, and indeed some of them go on to become professional coaches within the organization. And then it's about doing it and knowing when you actually use those skill sets. Clearly there's always a time for a manager at times to say, this is what I need you to do and how to do it. But the more you can actually empower people to know that they know what to do, then you can actually start creating that coaching culture. But it takes a few dedicated people to really want to engage in that way. One of the things that I came across many years ago when I first started working in organizations and training leaders to have coaching skills was this concept of hot coals. So if you could find managers and leaders who believed in this as a process, they went out and they delivered it, if you like, in that way. People then saw that there was a real benefit that they could develop themselves, and they then went and spoke to others. And so it's this hot coals where you can ignite other people's thinking. So it takes time.
Yeah, I like that idea of hot cold, Hilary. It's a very simple way of explaining what goes on there.
Yeah.
We have 4 attendees and coaches in our panel at the moment waiting to engage with you. Can I just call on them to share with you and move forward with that? Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Anu, you want to go first?
Yes. Hi.
Hi,
this is Anu from Mumbai. So I have been an internal coach, and I'm a certified internal coach for an organization. So I have just taking from the question, taking from the comment whether it should be OD driven or whether it should be CO driven. I think it has to be a combination. That's what I've realized over a period of time. So my question and the dilemma that I face is that uh, coaching culture and changing the beliefs of an organization very particularly have to be top down. But the problem that we face is when the CEO changes or the leadership, there's a leadership change. So we're left with conflicting thoughts and conflicting priorities at that point of time. And that's where I feel that the organization as a whole really suffers, and they feel that they don't know which way to go. And that's where the confusion, whether coaching is the right way or another system is a better way. So what are your thoughts on that? And how does one figure out ways to try and bring out a little more consistency in these approaches? Because otherwise the user group or the stakeholder groups always come back with, see, I told you it won't work kind of a scenario.
Do you know, you're so right. And in fact, I have experienced that in an organization that I work in still. And I've worked in for a number of years. It's an organization, very simplistically, it's an international organization, but simplistically had two fundamental pillars in its organization. And in one pillar, the most senior person there actually totally believed in coaching in order to develop people, and that was the right thing to do. And he then initiated a whole coaching program. And he actually initiated it for people who were just below first manager level and their managers. So it was to develop people into developing into managers and then giving them the transition coaching. And then those managers were also being given coaching. And that went on for a couple of years. He then got moved to the other pillar, if you like. And the person who came in behind him didn't believe in coaching. And all of a sudden it stopped. And so people were actually left quite concerned because there was a lot of good, there was beginning to be the elements of a coaching culture starting in this pillar, because as people were moving up, they were remembering how they were coached and using some of those skills, and they were given some skills as well. That stopped. The other pillar, he started the coaching again. So those people came through and were being coached. And so that side of the organization started again to get small elements of coaching culture going on. There's a real dichotomy there, because it does require the head of any organization to really believe in it. But when they change, it depends on who comes in. I think there are, is there a way of being able to stop that? I don't know. The only things that I think about is that if it is part of the strategic plan that an organization has that covers a 3-5 year, call it 10 year, it's probably difficult to do 10 years now, but 3-5 year period, and that the organization is following that plan somehow, that would be one way of making sure at least it stays in there, even if the person at the top comes in and doesn't necessarily believe it. I think the other thing is that coaching is not the resolution for everything. But what we know is it can actually create better workplaces, which means people will become more productive, and a better place to be. So in some ways, it's sometimes difficult to even quantify that. And one of the pieces of work that people do is looking on, is there a return on investment? Is there a return on equity? Those numbers can be sometimes really difficult to quantify, because people will say, well, actually, I would say that percentage comes from over here rather than just coaching. So one of the things that is really important whenever a coaching initiative is going in, and in HR, you'd know this, is to really do things like, what's the return on expectation? Using a very coaching approach which says, where are we now and where do we want to get to? And how do we measure that? And how do we know when we've got there? And does the coaching actually get us there? So it isn't an easy solution. And I saw you smile when I said, I don't know. I think it's one of those things so that if you can get it embedded, you can get enough traction behind it and you can get evidence. It's more easy to keep it going when someone comes in and perhaps has a different focus. I hope that aids you somehow. Should we take another one?
Yes. Elisa, do you want to go next? Yes. You're on mute. Unmute yourself.
There I am. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, great. Well, I have a few comments, which, you know, first of all, I'm so thrilled to see this, the numbers here. And at the same time, I'm not surprised because I knew that this needed to just catch on. I've been coaching for 9 years. I'm a PCC and my background is operational management. So I am typically an external coach and in New York City, and but of course I coach throughout the country and in some cases across, you know, the world. But what I wanted to say was two things. First of all, I totally agree with the top down. We have one, this is the one, out of all the companies that I've been coaching with, I finally am working on one at the moment where the leadership from the very top all engaged in this high impact leadership program where it included a couple of on-sites and coaching, and there was a little combination. But every manager in the company is going to be going through the program. And now we're already on the second cohort. There's a third cohort coming. But I couldn't agree more with letting you know that there's such a difference when there is almost a blanket of coaching coming from top down. Okay, so that's one thing. My other comment was in working for a different company, a very big company, over 100,000 employees. The CHR, the chief HR person, is certified as a coach and became certified a couple of years ago. And even with just having that one person at that rank in the leadership position, makes such a difference, the world of a difference. So that was it. And again, thank you for your information. It's very encouraging. I think obviously the economy has a lot to do with companies having more monies to hire coaches, both internal and external and otherwise.
Thanks. I really appreciate what you're saying, because, and I think when I talk about CEO, I think I talk about C-suite, and you're absolutely right. If you can have if the CHR is a certified credentialed coach, that does make a huge difference, because they've gone through the process and they know the benefit of that, and so do you. Well done on your PCC as well. I'm always pleased to hear that as well. But it is really, and I think it's really important that people who go in there to coach externally also demonstrate that they have those qualifications and they've done the work and the learning. So that combination of having people internally who've done this and externally will actually help a lot. Cindy, can I perhaps go on to a little bit about future and then pick up a few more questions?
Yes, I think so.
Great.
Shanaz, do you and Wendy mind just staying in the panel for a little while longer? You okay to do that?
Hopefully they are. Great.
Yes.
Okay. So let's just look at some of the future, because that might pick up a few other things that that might be useful. So I looked at some of the information we have on future trends, and one of the things that's coming about, and I have to say it's music to my ears. I came from a sort of HRE background back in the 90s, which is when I moved into coaching. But one of the things that's always been out there is these performance reviews, you know, the annual cycle when you go and when people have their appraisal or their performance reviews once a year. What we're finding now with those organizations that have got a more coaching culture is that it's much more about having frequent interactions throughout the year. So the manager who's got the coaching skills is able to develop, engage, and help people grow their own performance throughout the year, rather than it being that one-off at the end of the year. And that often is then associated with pay, etc. So the that the idea of annual performance appraisals are now being reduced into much more about working together throughout the year. There's also this concept really of on-the-job learning. You don't just now go to training programs. It's about understanding how you can develop people while they're working. And that relationship between the manager is really important. And if they do go on training programs, managers now have much more of ability to look at also what is you learned, and to help and coach them in a way, as well as using coaches, about how to embed that learning. So the whole notion of command and control, which was around certainly in the 80s and in the 90s, and to a large extent there's still a lot of organizations like that, that's beginning to move away into much more about involvement and participation. So it's a really important drive, I think, in this whole area of trying to find collaborative management. There are still times when you have to do the direct piece as well. When you look at Goleman's 6 leadership styles, that's still really valid work, but the whole aspect of using much more inclusive management is important. If we look at what else is happening, coaching is needed in team coaching, and we've seen the advent of a lot of training around that. But there is also a difference between team and group coaching. One of the things that is coming up also is the aspect of either group coaching or group supervision for internal coaches as well, which can be both. And managers also who've got coaching skills, there's a real element there of bringing them together with group coaching so that they can share their understanding and their challenges as well together, and there's a form of coaching going there. It's also really important that coaches do understand that team coaching is different. We use the same techniques, but there's real skill in doing team coaching, and so that's why this whole area of team coaching training is happening. The other piece is to really look at organizations as a system, and really supporting internal coaches, managers with coaching skills, and indeed external coaches, to look at what might be the blind spots inside organizations. And external coaches can really support that. So I would hope I would never see the external coach never being used, because they can add perspective where internal coaches and managers with coaching skills can have those blind spots. And here's a piece of information that came out also is to see what are organization planning over the next 5 years with the use of those 3 modalities. And you can see that although there's an element of reduction to slightly of external coaches and the increase of internal and managers with coaching skills, there's still very much a need for those, fundamentally those 2 modalities, and then also this real increase of using managers with coaching skills. Very few are looking to decrease in any degree any of those 3 aspects of coaching. So I think that's really heartening when we look at that, to say that coaching will still stay with us. And this will be things that you will notice. Did you want to come in, Cindy? I saw you take yourself off mute.
Yeah, the training managers, or the training of managers to use coaching skills, seems to really be a growing trend. I've also noticed that, and your slide before just highlighted that it seems to be a global process, right?
Very much so. Yeah, this is data taken from a global perspective as well. And although the training of managers to have coaching skills has been going on since I started coaching back in 2000, it seems to now be getting more traction. And the thinking is because of this understanding around what strong coaching cultures can do, is to get managers to be more coach-like. Not to become coaches, but to be more coach-like in using those skills. So yes, it's a global piece that's growing at the moment, and that's really where the focus is. That and team coaching.
And it also just sustains this coaching culture, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yes, it does. going back to, I can't remember who was talking about it, but with organizations, what was happening is if you coached people at the lower level, if you like, and their manager didn't have that same style, they would say, well, why should I do anything different? Because my manager doesn't work with me this way. So it's a really important piece that managers at all levels actually understand the need to use a more coach-like approach with how they're developing people.
Go on, Hilary. You got
Okay.
a few more. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just also look. So here was again just some statistics around about future trends, really, again, about looking at coach-specific training. Importantly, about mentor coaching. Mentoring is a different skill, but what we know is that great mentors use coaching skills in the way of mentoring. And there's a need for mentoring in organizations because there are people who don't know certain things, and mentors are around having been there and being able to use their experience to support others. But a great mentor uses coaching skills around that. It's also, what we're noticing is the importance of creating communities of practice in organizations. So that's where perhaps group coaching comes in, where people can get together to discuss what they're doing and learn and develop from that, as well as the need to get credentials and certificates, to get qualified to do this. So that feeds into this need for really properly accredited programs. And I'm a real advocate of coaching supervision. And I think in organizations, I think it's really important that, we can see here that it's a growing need to offer coaching supervision, especially to internal coaches, to support them to have a place to go to discuss their development in a secure and safe place. So these are just some things I thought would be interesting to share with you. And before I open it up again, and I've got a case study, I loved these wordles that came out. We did a piece of research in 2017, and over it they said, what are the 3 words that would describe your predominant management style at the organization? And the bigger words show what was said most often. So the predominant management style in many of them was, yes, collaborative, but it was also very direct, authoritative. And you can see that gradually coaching is there, but it's in a smaller letters, open and efficient, but not very big either. And then they asked the question, what would you say would be the most effective style to have in your organization? And the wordle comes out as this. So again, the large words are those words that people cited most often. So we see collaborative, coaching, supportive, participatory, teamwork, empowering and flexible. All those words that really speak to what coaching is. Yes, you need to have a certain amount of direct management. You need to be effective, but all of those other pieces are what people say would be the most effective style of management that people would need. So that, to me, very graphically speaks to why coaching in organizations is so important. So let me just finally, and then open it up, say, let's see what some of the recommendations would be. And I think these are important, and there's plenty of information you'll find elsewhere. The first 2 are really important. There's a line item on the budget. It needs financing somehow. Now, there are organizations such as GSK, who won the Prism Award, who actually finance it by offering coaching to departments and say, you need to provide funding back to the coaching team, if you like, to help develop and train others. So it came from within the departments, not a line item as such on the business. But it does need to be part of a strategic plan. Those 2 things are really important. It's also now being seen, as Cindy and I just spoke, that managers and leaders need to get properly, really accredited coach-specific training. It doesn't have to be the same length of training as a professional coach, but they have a really good piece of training that they really understand what it means to have a coaching style. And that they're then given the time, and that they know how to create the time to spend to coach or use their coaching skills with their people, rather than just manage them from a direct perspective. that coaching is available to everybody, and that everyone actually does get to experience a professional coach. That might be an internal or an external coach, but they do have the experience of what pure coaching, for example, might be like. And that everybody in the organization really does get to value coaching. So they see the benefits of it. And as I was saying earlier, it's seen as a merit badge. And the final piece is that it's about being able to offer all three modalities. It's not just external, it's not just internal, it's not just manager with coaching skills. It's that availability of all of that that really does deliver a coaching culture eventually. So let me open it up to some more questions.
Yeah. I think what I'm also feeling very inspired about, Hilary, is that whereas a few years ago, most companies, or even today, most companies only want to introduce coaching. So the culture within the organization would just be coaching. And it's very inspiring and pleasing to see that it's now a basket full of coaching related, value heads, like mentoring and coach training, supervision. It feels like the profession is being developed and the coaching culture is here to stay.
I think you say that beautifully, actually, yes. And I think that's what culture is, isn't it? It's a mix. It's not just one thing. It's a mixture. And that's so important. If we think about cultures, even in the world, it's about creating that mix. And then ultimately it's how we do things around here that people really want. So I think it's beautifully said. Yeah, I'd agree.
Thank you. Shanaz, you want to go ahead with your question?
Hi, Cindy. Thanks, Hilary.
Hi.
Hi there. You've covered my question when you spoke about return on expectation, and I was thinking of Lisa and Edward's session yesterday on return on investment and how does one make the compelling arguments to organizations that still need to be persuaded about the value of coaching and building a coaching culture. So I would love if you could say a little bit more about what you use when you speak about return on expectation. Just some more insight on that. I'm thinking of it to see how does one use that almost as a framework, to work out one's own formula on return on expectation that one can use to help make credible arguments. I love your metaphor of walking over coals, because it is going to burn sometimes, it is going to take time, and you're going to need to be able to stay the course. Those were some meanings that I'm making out of that. And I'd love to understand what some other meanings that you make out of that analogy that you've been using over the years. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And actually what's interesting is the analogy I had of hot coals was more about sparking and inspiring others. But actually, I love the way you turn that into walking on hot coals, because I think it's what I would say with the walking on hot coals is you have to have trust, don't you? In order to walk on hot coals, I've never done it, but those people who have, you have to have trust that actually you can get from one end to the other, and there may be often little spikes of heat, but that heat will not kill you, that will not burn you. And so there's a trust piece in that's how I would use that metaphor, is trusting that we can get from A to B. There may be some difficulties on the way, but it's worth the effort. It's worth the trust in doing that. And I think you make a good point that it's not easy always to be able to look at what that return on investment might be. But the return on expectation, I would say, is if you can get the strategic imperative, and if we use it from a coaching approach that says, what will it be like? What will it look like? What would be different when the organization has a coaching culture, for example? So we can use it much more from that coach-like status, is getting to that place may then also enable us to quantify it slightly more. There are many equations that will tell you how to do a return on investment equation, but a lot of people don't necessarily believe in it. And what we have to do is bring it to light in some sort of imagery or metaphor that people could understand, and then relate it back. If I think about the really easy one, which the case study I have looks at, which we may or may not talk about, but it's on the slides. That case study was looking at return on investment would be, can we retain our people longer so that we stop spending so much money on recruitment fees? And when you do that, what they wanted to do was create a culture where people valued being there. It was a scientific organization, so they were seeing people with skills walking out the door that they needed to keep because they wanted to innovate. And what they did is said, we want the culture where people will actually stay here and we can use their skill set. And out of that, because they did that and they decreased turnover, they've saved that $700,000 US a year. Having said that, just as a byproduct of that case study, which I will leave you to read for yourselves, is one of the sadnesses of that. They won the Prism Award last year because in over 5 years, they really developed a wonderful coaching culture. I went to visit them, and it truly was there. You could feel it. Sadly, that organization where it is in Vancouver is being closed. And that was a real shock for us when they told us in November. They called us up to tell us this. But one of the things that was really significant, and again was why they won the award, was that what they said was, because they had the culture, they were able to communicate really effectively with their people. The people trusted them, which meant that they worked out plans for everybody about leaving in a way that meant that they would leave well. They did it in a way that meant they kept people they needed, and they needed most people to stay in the organization right to the very end. And they will be closing in June. And when I visited them in March, they had only lost 8% of people at that time, and that most people had the plans going through to the final date in June. And they attribute that to the fact that they had built a coaching culture. Now, you could say, how would you ever know that was going to happen? But one of the things I think, the return on expectation there was that they had delivered an environment where people felt valued, and they knew that there was nothing they could do, it was nothing they did wrong, but that the organization would take care of them, would look after them. And I think that's a really important story that says not all things work out with real rosiness, as it were. But if you can get an organization where people trust and value you, you can do things like having to close an organization well, with people leaving knowing that they were looked after and with good spirits. Thank you for that question. I think I answered it all.
Yeah, you did. Hilary, we just got about a few more minutes left, yes. And we got one more question from Dilip, and I want to engage with you a bit on the credentialed coach.
Yes.
So let Dilip go first, and then you and I can talk about that.
Absolutely.
Dilip?
Yeah, this is good morning, Hilary, and good afternoon, Cindy. I will rather give you an experience of mine, and if Hilary remembers, I won the Prism Award for my company, JK Organization, in 2014.
Yes.
And that's for only coaching culture.
Yes.
And I'll rather tell you my experience, how this coaching culture is about. I totally agree with Hilary that it's the internal senior people, not necessarily to be trained to be a real coach, but they are trained to have a coaching conversation. And this coaching conversation is very much important on a day-to-day work in the organization. And that has helped a lot to the organization in building a coaching culture. And when it comes to the CROI, or expectations from the people, coaching expectations, see, I'll tell you, the ROI is nothing but it helps you to build a trust. If anybody knows the finance director of any company, then they will certainly agree with me. These are the people will never allow you to spend a single pie without telling them that what is the return you are bringing instead of the expenses or the investment you are doing. So for that purpose, I have my own experience telling them that, see, the ROI helps there in really building a trust in the organization. The senior team people, they really trust that the coaching culture can really do wonders. And one more thing one has to remember, that it's not, when it comes to the coaching in an organization environment, it's not all about the interest of the organization. See, if we talk about only the interest of the organizations, then I doubt whether people or the coaches will take it seriously and will able to really transform themselves. So I have, my experience tells that we asked that people, the senior executives, what they want to get coached for. It includes their own personal life, their family, and also the organization, how organization will get benefited out of that. And we also keep their family people as one of the stakeholders to really sustain this coaching movement in the organizations. And that makes a lot of difference when it comes to sustaining the coaching culture in the organization. Otherwise, it's just like any other training programs going on in the organizations with bit seriousness, but results, it's very difficult to really quantify.
Thank you,
Thank
Dilip.
you.
And congratulations again for the Prism Award, because I know that that's a hard one to do. So, and well done. Thank you.
Hilary, you and I got like 2 minutes to answer this question. And before we go there, coaches, I know that what Hilary was saying has answered most of your questions. It came out of what she shared and some of the discussions raised. But some of your questions have not been answered. Magda's going to collect those questions and we'll find a way to answer it for you. So, Hilary, back to you and I.
Let me stop. Yeah, go and ask.
We have these kind of differing views about the value of the credential coach, as opposed to a non-credential coach. Now, I don't want to go into that part and make analysis. You have this collective global wisdom around these studies and what goes on around the world. Is the value of credentialing increasing? What is the trend at the moment?
The trend is, the number of people being credentialed is increasing all the time. And in the last 5 years, I don't have the slide for it, but in the last 5 years, we've gone from something like 14,000 credential holders to over 22, and I think we've hit 23. That's increasing month on month as we're seeing it. The other piece that is coming out of some of the studies that we've done is that organizations are saying more and more that they're wanting to hire credential coaches. And because they see the value and the fact that we now there are so many credential coaches around the world, what they're looking for is people who are well and properly trained, and the ICF credential is really showing that. So yes, the increase is there, and we don't see it slowing down at this point.
Well, you answered the second part of my question about the value of the credential coach in organizations, because that's what we're finding in South Africa. There is that question always. Are you ICF credentialed,
Yeah.
So in organizations. Thank you, Hilary. But before I go around, do you have a question for Hilary?
No, nothing at all. We are on top of that. Just wanted to say thank you very much, Hilary. Wonderful having you here. And Magda would do the honors in closing the session.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Hilary. Lovely partnering with you.
And you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hilary. And thank you very much, Cindy, for moderating.
everyone, we are closing shop for this session, but please come back in 14 minutes for our next session on coaching presence with Janet Harvey and Prash Miranda. We hope to see you soon. And for anyone who isn't going to be joining us, if you want to claim CCEUs, just a reminder to wait until next week when you get instructions to do that. So thank you so much. Hilary, it's been wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon, everyone.
Bye.